Now, the Pietermaritzburg High Court has reserved its ruling on the application filed by the Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority against Ithala Bank. The authority wants the court to overturn a November 24 court ruling which found the Repayment Administrator, Johan Kruger, had overstepped powers to take control of operations at Ithala Bank. Now, whilst Ithala wants the court to grant extended orders giving permission to continue operating as normal, pending the outcome of the provisional liquidation application brought against it by the Prudential Authority. To unpack this matter, we are joined by Mpumelelo Zikalala. He's a legal analyst from Zikalala Attorneys. Mpumelelo, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us to try and unpack what's going on here.
Well, good morning to you, and also good morning to your viewers.
So, okay, there's a lot to get through, but let's perhaps start here. What were the court application arguments from Ithala Bank and then from the Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority?
Maybe a bit of history is important in this matter. Remember what the repayment master and the Prudential Authority is saying. We want to go into Ithala, take care of whatever that is happening within Ithala, because Ithala has failed to comply with the Banking Act. The notion behind that being you want to protect the various deposits that have been paid by Ithala clients. Ithala on the other side is saying, yes, you go and do that, but don't go and look into things which do not belong to you. You must only go and concentrate on the deposits and nothing else. Anything that has to do with the day-to-day operations must still be maintained by us. Precisely, and one of the reasons being, we are a government-owned institution, so the PFMA is applicable to us. So if you go on as a Prudential Authority or the payment regulator or the payment master, and you want to take over the SCM processes, for example, you want to take over the payment of individuals, how are you going to do the processes and how are you going to account with the AG at a later stage? But while we're dealing with the liquidation application, which is going to flow at the later stage, you are building a very fertile ground for that liquidation application to come through. Because you're not allowing us to operate as a normal bank so that we're able to make sure that we have the liquidity which is required. You are basically cutting the oxygen from us by making sure that we're not able to operate for the next upcoming months.
Yeah. All right. So this is it's a very big one, and you've got the Prudential Authority who wants the court to overturn this November 24 court ruling. So basically, this ruling found the Repayment Administrator had overstepped its powers to take control of operations at Ithala. What powers do the Repayment Administrator have, actually?
What the ruling actually found was to say, a repayment regulator, what you are now doing, you're overstepping your powers and getting into things that you're not supposed to get into. Go and look after the deposits in which you want, in which to get. Now, ordinarily, what the repayment regulator or would have power to do to say, in a normal bank that is not government owned or not partly owned by government, let's go in there and see what's happening with the people's deposits, make sure that we're able to secure them, make sure that we're able to make sure that there's no other looting which is going to take place or bleeding which is going to take place. Everything that is done in a normal manner, in a manner which protects the integrity of the bank and the whole transaction as a whole. So if there are any insurance or any investment that have been there, make sure that they're not being cashed out at the last minute, so that only a few individuals can be able to get those repayments at the end of the day. Remember, why are we doing these two things? Either I'm preparing that the bank or the institution must be able to trade as normally again, or secondly, I want to prepare for the liquidation process so that when that liquidation process comes, we get as much as we can from the coffers of the bank that would have operated. Now, in this case, it is somewhat different because we are not dealing with the bank, for example, VPS that is privately owned. We're dealing with a bank that gets, for example, government grants, a bank that is able to source its funding from somewhere else. So it's not a normal situation in which could be dealt with in a normal manner. Hence, the payment regulator and the Prudential Authority should operate within that particular context of understanding the situation that you are in, which is what Ithala is saying.
Yeah. Do they have a strong legal case to institute a provisional liquidation against Ithala?
Yes, they do, depending on what they went and found when they did their investigation. Remember, what is important here is that there are people that have paid in their monies as deposits. There's the investments that are there. If you can't guarantee that at least the capital is going to be repaid, then it's up to them, as per the powers given to them by the relevant legislation, to go and protect the monies that have been paid. The worst thing, or the one thing that you don't want to happen, is for certain payments or people that just deposited their money is hard work and cash, and only to find out that they can't get it back because the bank has basically been liquidated or ceases to operate.
Yeah.
So the Prudential Authority goes in to say, let me at least secure the little that there is. But the manner of going in and securing is what is important, both for Ithala and both for the members of the public, to say, if you go in there, please make sure that you are able to allow this bank to be an ongoing operation, and it's not going to be something which is going to cease, especially because its mandate is a bit different from the normal bank that you would find when you go out commercially. And secondly, it has strong backing from the provincial government, which then says, we are willing to assist wherever we can. We're providing grants as we are doing now because we can see the importance of the bank. So allow it to trade. So don't cut the oxygen, as I stated earlier, of the bank, because it still needs to operate at the end of the day. So whatever powers in which you're going to get, those powers must be progressive in nature and not be powers in which you only seek to stop all the operations that are taking place, all in the name of saying, I want to secure the deposits of individuals.
Perhaps you can just give a little bit of light on this one and then answer the same question. Firstly, why was Ithala's application to operate as a bank declined? And then perhaps adding into your answer here is, how did this exemption from holding a banking license actually impact its operational stability?
That's a bit of history. Remember, in South Africa, we have the Banking Act that basically says, if you and I want to create a bank, what is it that you must do? Now, according to that legislation, although I stand to be corrected on this one, government is not allowed to be part and parcel of that process. So in the case of Ithala, with the provincial government coming on board and being basically, for a lack of a better word, the shareholder, there was an exemption that was made to say, okay, let's have this understanding that we are going to have that even though you're a government institution, however, you are going to have a say and allow you to operate. Now, within that particular operation, there were then other banks that were roped in to say, can we lend your systems and processes so that we're able to comply? We need to comply with the latest technology, for example, when it comes to deposits. Bank A, can you please go and assist us in this case by providing those guarantees? Then Bank A will come back and say, yes, I can, but I want you to comply with the following. I need you to have a proper CFO. I need you to have these particular systems. Your security levels must be up to the scratch. These are the systems in which you are going to utilize in your ATMs. So you have someone who's an overseer of what is happening within your bank, who is a registered bank as per the Banking Act. Now, the extensions in terms of those exemptions kept on being extended up until roughly about the year 2023, when then the response was to say, we are not giving you those extensions anymore, so you must go and see and seek other means. Hence, we find ourselves in this trouble, because what then happens is that after 2023, according to the Banking Act, Ithala does not have a license to operate anymore. Hence, if you don't have a license to operate, you shouldn't be accepting deposits from members of the public.
Sure. My worry here is obviously the depositors. And I mean, you mentioned now the court heard Ithala was operating under the exemption notice from the PA, which subsequently withdrew as Ithala failed to comply with the laws. So what does this mean for thousands of depositors and its operations?
That's the one individual, the one group of people that I feel very sorry about.
Yeah.
In two instances. Firstly, even at court yesterday, they were not represented by anyone. So you have someone taking a decision on your behalf. Meanwhile, you're not there in order for the court to understand the type of hardships that you're going into. Secondly, is the one of saying the notion or the motive behind why Ithala Bank was formed is a noble one. You can see the impact and you can see that there are people that are benefiting from what Ithala is doing. But it seems as if we're only focusing on the strict compliance with the Banking Act and not even thinking of how the Banking Act can change so that it can be able to fulfill or be in line with what the people are looking for. My other aspect would be directed to the legislatures themselves to say, you within Parliament, whether it's provincial or national, have the powers to pass or change whatever the Banking Act is saying in order to accommodate government being part and parcel of banking schemes such as Ithala, for lack of a better word. So if you don't do that, it means that you are not even thinking what is in the best interest of the individuals that are there. So you are correct. Members of the public, those 200 to 300,000 people that have deposited their money at Ithala are the most important individuals, and yet their voices has not been heard. The impact of what is happening in their daily lives has not been heard. Just think about it between you and I. If we woke up today and we were told that we can't access our bank accounts, how are we going to survive on a daily basis? Worse if you are running a business.
It's frightening for depositors. I mean, they've been frozen. They can't withdraw functions. We know that there's approximately 76,000 SASSA payments that are made there. The National Treasury has allocated a 2 billion rand guarantee, but like you say, it just seems that the depositors are at the bottom of the food chain here, whereas they should actually be at the top of the food chain. It's their money, and rightfully so. But this, as you say, is a very historical case, because the Prudential Authority says Ithala has operated under several exemption notices. The last of this exemption notice was issued in July 22, lapsed in December 23, but Ithala says they're still able to operate. How does this make sense?
Again, it must be separated as to what can we operate on. If you want to operate on taking deposits, then the law is very clear. Once you don't have a license, you don't have a license. But anything else, for example, in terms of those transactions which are going to take place, then it's fine. Maybe we should separate the two. Can you be able to accept deposits which are going to be deposited by individuals and be able to pay them back? So you're basically the bridge between the one paying and the person who's receiving the money. Or are you going to get into the integral part of what would happen in a normal bank, where deposits are being taken, they are being reinvested, there's interest which is generated, and then you are being paid your whatever due amount is due to you at the time in which you are requesting it. Those safeguards that need to be there is something that needs to be understood. It's something that needs to be, there needs to be some sort of assurance that is there. What government is doing now in terms of Treasury and the other bank which is coming into the fore and saying we can be able to assist is something that ought to have been done in December. It ought to have been done, this is something that should be done even much earlier than December, to say this is the situation that we're in. We would like to operate this particular bank. There are a number of individuals that are there, 250,000 odd individuals that are there that would like to operate. Can we find a way of being able to move forward? The bigger picture, by the way, being, if you can see that by the end of the 36 months, there's a viable operation that you are doing as the KwaZulu-Natal government through Ithala, why not lobby for the Banking Act to be changed so that you are able to participate in whatever banking activities as government? If you are going to sit and not change legislation which is available to you, and then you can't come back at the end of the day and say, I need to operate and be given a lifetime exemption, something that simply cannot be done. But in this case, my plea would be, let's look at what the people or the depositors of Ithala say. We need to be protected. We need our funds. We need Ithala to operate. Let's do all we can to make sure that we're able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, as we see, 250,000 clients. There's about 400 staff that are working there. People depend, particularly in rural areas, to get their SASSA grants from Ithala Bank that have deposited in there. So there is a lot of impact to those that have invested, and particularly into the province of KwaZulu-Natal. But we won't have time to get into this. My final question to you is, obviously, the SIU is also investigating serious maladministration in connection with the bank's affairs, tendering for the supply implementation, maintenance of an integrated banking solution. I was also looking at some of the issues that they've got evidence of about 250 or 260 underage accounts and loans that have been given to those under 18 years of age, and that is clearly not allowed. I'm not sure what the circumstances around that is, but, you know, in your opinion, with all of this against it, what does the bank's future look like?
Well, it's a very bleak future. Remember that in any business, there needs to be constant cash flow. And if that particular cash flow is going to be stopped, all in the name of doing investigation, that means we're not going to get anywhere. By the time the investigations are done, where we are done with recoveries, there won't be any bank to come back to. So that's another thing that must be looked at. At the same breath, criminality can't be ignored. So the terms of these investigations must be done expeditiously to say, what can we do in order to be able to obtain that? Legally speaking, if you're going to talk about all those things allegedly that have been happening, they're quite bad. They damage the brand, but most importantly, all the monies which have then been taken, you must come back and say, whose money is it? Is it that of government to granting aid, or is it actually the depositor's money? If it's both of these individuals, then the Prudential Authority is quite correct to say, I want to go in and make sure that I'm able to protect members of the public. But in doing so, let's see how this model, which has been seen to be working, that has benefited a number of individuals, as there are 250 clients that are currently on their books, how can we be able to save it, meanwhile being able to root out all the maladministration and the bad things that have taken place?
All right, we leave it there. Thank you, Mpumelelo Zikalala. Thank you so much for giving us a better understanding of the situation. Legal analyst from Zikalala Attorneys, talking to us about the Pietermaritzburg High Court reserving its ruling on the application filed by the Reserve Bank's private authority against Ithala Bank.